first. The smell of antiseptic and something metallic. Machines beeping in uneven rhythms, and my brother, hooked up to more wires than I could count. The day before, he just had a fever. Now, doctors were saying the word sepsis. Sepsis. I mean, the word itself sounded harsh, critical, almost too small for how terrifying it really is. As I eventually learned, sepsis is a life-threatening response to infection that moves incredibly fast. One moment, someone seemed stable, and the next, their organs began to fail. I remember standing there thinking two things. One, I am terrified. And two, I'm completely useless. Because what can a high school student actually do in a situation like that? For a long time, I believed something very specific about impact. I thought that real change happened later, after college, after degrees, after someone decided you were qualified enough, especially in science. We're taught the sequence, first learn, then apply. First train, then contribute. We're often taught to treat training as something that must happen now so that contribution can happen later, as if you have to finish learning before you're allowed to start doing. When in reality, doing is kind of how you learn in the first place. And when you hear that long enough, you begin to internalize it. You start believing that you're not supposed to try yet, that you're just potential, a future scientist, a future innovator, not a present one. My brother survived, and I am endlessly grateful for that. But watching him fight for his life changed something in me. When you see how fast something like sepsis moves, someday stops feeling acceptable. I didn't want to wait until I was 30 to start thinking about problems like this. I wanted to know if I could start now. I didn't really have access to a research lab or a hospital. I didn't have funding or a formal mentor. At that time, what I had was a laptop and internet access. So I started there. I searched for open medical data sets and found gene expression data from past clinical studies. Then I realized I didn't fully understand how to analyze it, so I taught myself. I watched college lectures on YouTube, paused constantly, Googled terms I didn't know, and took free online courses on machine learning. And I have to say, a spreadsheet has absolutely no business being that complicated. Step by step, I began building and testing models to see whether early biological patterns could help predict sepsis outcomes sooner. But I didn't cure sepsis. That was never really the point. Rather, the point was that nobody had to give me permission to begin. And that's because the barriers that used to prevent young people from participating have changed dramatically. For a long time, we've carried that assumption, the idea that young people are just potential. And sure, that mindset made sense decades ago, when access to research tools, education, and data was tightly controlled. Laboratories were physical spaces you had to be invited to. Advanced coursework required enrollment in specific institutions. In that world, contribution truly was gated. But today, those gates are opening. Access to the internet itself has skyrocketed, where decades ago only a fraction of households had reliable connections. Today, about 96% of US teens report that they use the internet every day. That means students can learn whatever they want: advanced biology, coding, data science, machine learning, even literature, on their own schedule and from anywhere. And fortunately, the tools needed to work with that information have become just as accessible. Open repositories and collaborative platforms now host enormous amounts of real research data that students can explore, many of them freely available. On platforms like GitHub, students can dig into data sets and build on existing projects. As a result, high school students from around the world are beginning to contribute in meaningful ways, collecting data on issues like microplastics in their local water, or building models that sometimes end up cited in professional journals. Access has democratized impact, and the youth are taking advantage of it. Gitanjali Rao, for example, first gained attention in middle school at just 11 years old when she developed TEPIS, a device to detect lead in drinking water that was later deployed in schools and communities. She then went on to create AI tools to monitor cyberbullying and opioid misuse, and by 15, she was named Time Magazine's first ever Kid of the Year for scientific and social impact. And of course, people like Greta Thunberg show us what youth-led impact can look like at a global scale. But meaningful contribution shouldn't just be limited to exceptional outliers. At Lakeside, we see the same spirit here in action. Students here have taken the initiative to build tools like Andromeda, a student-driven AI platform that gives the upper school community access to a wide range of AI models. By developing and experimenting on projects like this, Lakeside students are contributing to and shaping the future right now. Yet, despite that, there's still a bias against young people. It's that same stubborn mindset, that idea that we can only be consumers of knowledge. It's that mindset that makes us wait, hesitate, and assume we aren't ready. But, underestimated as we often are, young people are uniquely positioned to see emerging problems early, immerse themselves in digital tools, and experiment with ideas without being constrained by how it's always been done. We often engage with new technologies socially before ever being formally trained to use them. We're used to learning things from people who technically aren't our teachers. And because we're learning in real time, we're sometimes more willing to question assumptions or try unconventional approaches that more established systems might overlook. Now, to be clear, I'm not expecting you all to go home and change the world before tomorrow morning. I mean, you all still have homework and other obligations to get to. Rather, what I'm trying to emphasize here is that starting now doesn't mean having all the answers. It just means identifying a problem that matters to you, looking into what already exists, learning just enough to take that next step, then iterating, failing, asking better questions. When I think back to that hospital room, the machines, fear, the helplessness, I still remember feeling small, but I don't feel powerless anymore. Impact isn't something that begins after someone hands you credentials. In this technological era, this new era, the tools are accessible and the opportunities are real. Every question you ask, every idea you test, every prototype you build, that's all a chance to make a difference right now. So the question isn't whether we're ready. The question is, what are we waiting for? Thank you.